What's going on, guys? It's Cole with See-Through Panel doing a informal review of Echolands by J.H. Williams III, W. Hayden Blackman, Dave Stewart, and Todd Klein. This is, as you can tell, a landscape format book. Looks like it retailed for about $35 US, contains 6 issues of Echolands, and right from the jump you can see what makes this special, besides the landscape format, which I'll get into, just the sheer breadth of art styles that J.H. Williams is doing here. Before you even get into the book, you can see all kinds of references to different forms of media and genres that he is using and taking into this book, called Echolands for a good reason, as it kind of echoes many things that came before it and uses them in new and creative ways. And as usual, I will not be formally spoiling the book. I'll be flipping through it though, and may show some panels that you will find to be plot heavy. So if you haven't read it and you think this would spoil it for you, read this first and then come back, we can talk about it. Before we get into it, let's look at the credits. Nice foreword by both of the creators, Blackman and Williams. And here you can see J.H. Williams III and W. Hayden Blackman are co-writers and creators. Williams does art and design, Dave Stewart does colors, Todd Klein is the letterer, and Drew Gill does additional design. Now, the cool thing about Dave Stewart on colors is that foreword by Neil Gaiman and Kurt Busiek. The thing about having Dave Stewart on colors is that Williams actually paints a lot of this book, including this cover here, so this would be actually Williams doing his own colors. But for most of the book, like, this is mostly Dave Stewart. And there are some pages that I know to be entirely colored by Williams himself, like this one. This is fully painted by Williams. Maybe not painted, but at least colored by Williams. So Dave Stewart did not color this, but he does color much of the book, and so that's a very blurred line as you go through this. So I have to give credit to both of them at all times. Just, I don't want to assume anything, but stylistically you can see there's already clashing art styles going on here. The very retro, very almost Disney-like, fairy tale-like style for our titular hero, Hope Red Hood. I guess not titular, but she is the main character. She is obviously a riff on Red Riding Hood, but is a lot more than that, as many of these references are. And you can see how he's playing with the landscape form, and he really uses it just perfectly throughout this book. Nice one here. Does a lot of tricks with the layouts. It's mostly an art book for me, but I will say, when it comes to Blackman and Williams collaborations, I've not been the biggest fan of the writing. But this one, I really enjoyed the story. I think it works really well. The art just really, really accentuates a lot of these story beats that Williams is trying to convey here. And the cool thing about the landscape format is that he can do some wacky layouts. Like, he goes left to right here. And the really impressive thing is that he never loses your eye. Like, this is a pretty easy spread to follow here. But there are some that are much less conventional than that. And even that was not conventional. This is one of the characters named Core. And you can see it's kind of hard to tell at times, but the style he's rendered in is very scratchy, very inky. Different than, say, Hope herself, who's much more realistic modern style. And then these police, very loose, cartoony. Here's where he starts to play with the layouts a little bit more. You'll see this actual kind of cobblestone layout. He uses that a lot throughout the book. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And the kind of panel borders get a little less rigid as you go through here. And just small things like this really bring you into the book and the world and kind of make it just even easier to be sucked into this book and just keep reading and reading. And it's actually a pretty, in terms of story, it's breezy, not a ton of words. It's not a novel or anything like that. But you can just linger on the art for hours. Each issue for hours and hours. And the coloring is just gorgeous. Dave Stewart, I mean, obviously one of the best in the business, but he really knocks it out of the park here. Anyone working with Williams, I'm sure, is just ecstatic to work with him because he's a monster. He does everything, and he does it perfectly. He does almost any style you can think of, and just does it so well. Conveys emotion really well through the faces. Consistent renderings of the people. I know I'm going page by page here, but I can definitely skip through a little bit more. Really, really good play of the light, too, and just... That's almost... I don't know what to compare that to, besides the coloring reminds me of the Drie book I reviewed on the show. That it's just so... I love the thick black outline effect. Another fantastic layout. And he's obviously just drawing your eye all the way through here. Kind of a Western style. Reminds me a bit of Blueberry by Mobius, but I think I see Mobius in a little too much stuff here. It's probably not all that, but I see it a lot in this book. If you're going to reference any artist, I mean, that's the one to do it. The story is just a straight-up adventure book. Just a group of people, a consistent group of characters on the run, moving from place to place, always seeing new landscapes, new vistas of this really, really gorgeous world called the Echolands. And it's called that, as I said, because it is kind of just fragments and parts of other stories all jumbled up together into one. Black and white here for the first time in this book. He's going to come back to that a lot. It's really hard to fit the entire scene into the into frame here. At the end of each story, which love that cinematic framing for the very last page, kind of like a pinhole effect. The scene's closing in on a dramatic moment. At the end of each issue, we get a nice shot of this kind of gray alien, classically styled gray alien in a crystal ball, kind of predicting and giving you a little foreshadowing into the next issue. And you also get these text pieces that are an interview with one of the big bad, who's definitely Star Wars inspired. You can tell there, that's him. And an interview with him to kind of get in his head, and the text pieces work really well. They're nice and short, just this page, and this is even kind of long for one of them. And then after each issue, you also get advertisements in the world. Really great world building here. And then this consistent comic strip. You get one of these strips by Anton Veracruz, which is just J.H. Williams. But it's an in-world comic strip, and you get one of these at the end, and they are a treat. This is just a gorgeous style. So the spotted blacks all around are just beautiful. You don't really get to see Williams play with this much ink on the page normally. And as I've said before, this outlining here is just to die for. I love that effect. And it's consistently these two characters you see in this panel here. Very clever, very, very cool world building stuff to really immerse you in the story. And then each issue has a lead-in quote from a character in world, and then this similar layout and design. If I find it, the first one. So the colors change, this kind of cosmos, kind of space scene with the little blotchy painterly effect over it. And then this shape really is important to the story as well. Recurring theme. There's another cover here that is just beautiful. And so, like I said, Blackman and J.H. Williams on Batwoman, I really enjoyed that story. but I thought at times the writing did not hit the highs that the art hits, which, to be fair, is not something you can expect, because I can't think of a writer as skilled in their craft as Williams is skilled in his. Maybe Alan Moore, who he worked with on Promethea, where it was the first time I ever saw him. And he has evolved, clearly. He has gone to the next level and then several levels after that. Also the two there, just like the one I showed you earlier. This issue counter here. And the story, I mean, I really, really liked it. It's more than I expected. I expected this to be an art book, but thoroughly enjoyed the story. It's not a complete story. It's more of a single arc and a long-form story. I think he's already working on, it would be, I think, 7 to 12 would be the next book. Hopefully we get it in a similar format. And even obviously, even the issues were in this landscape format. It was really cool, and they had no gutter loss. That's the one thing you don't get recreated from the issues. I wish I had them on hand. Is the issues, they're bound perfectly so they fold out and you have no gutter loss. There's a little bit of gutter loss on this hardcover, but that's to be expected. But they did the best with what they could, and it's a really nice landscape book. There's not many of those going around all the time, so it's really nice to see one done, and one that plays with the form as much as this does. And again, following through, he's always leading your eye to what could be a very messy layout, what could be very hard to distinguish what's coming next. Where do I read? What word balloons do I go to next? Never a problem. Not once in this book is that a problem. This video will probably be a little bit longer than some of my other videos because I'm going to be a little bit rambly and just repeatedly compliment the art. But how couldn't you? That's another one I see Mobius in there. I see Mobius in that design a lot. You can see the black and white vampire in the back there as well. And then this kind of 30s kind of old classic comic strippy style. I can't exactly define what it is that it reminds me of, but it is just really cool to see all these different styles bouncing off each other. Kirby designs here. A lot of that coming up in the future. I would like to find one more. Oh, that's kind of like an old classic pirate comic cover. Very photorealistic, painterly. I think this leads me to believe that it was actually colored by Williams himself, but I could be completely wrong. It just looks like it's too painterly to be Stewart, but I do not know that for sure. Really cool use of the events happening on the page to lead your eye, and also very Kirby-inspired style that we're seeing here. You get a lot more of that as you go. You can just kind of see the machinery there. Very, very much, very clearly a Kirby influence. And the cool thing about this book is that it wears its influences on its sleeve. It's Echolands. These are echoes of things you've seen before, and you're supposed to pick up on that. It's not like I did a lot of thinking to figure that out. It's right there on the page. Let's see if I can. Here's another one of those black and white outro there. I would like to find another example of core. Oh, here's a good, beautiful cover and showing off that black and white style and Kirby style at the same time. So almost like a Bernie Wrightson-esque, but even more realistic than that. Black and white, kind of Frankenstein monster there, and then just Kirby. It's just Orion. I mean, and then some Kirby tech in the back there. Again, no conventional panel borders, just using the actual structure of the narrative itself as panel borders here. Really, really cool stuff. There's Core again, so I want to kind of show off. His style, I think, could be construed as just being the normal style of the book, like the backgrounds are, but I think it's a little scratchier than that. You can see all of the shading. He's not hiding it. It's very loose on his arms and legs there. werewolves coming out. I'll start flipping a little quicker here. Pretty bonkers layouts in this issue, and I can't flip quicker because every page is just so gorgeous. Drawing the eye down and over the rails, you can see. I love the water effect, the surface of the water that he does there. The light coming through in the background. Hyper detail on all of that. I mean, you could look at this image really, really closely. It's very detailed, and you zoom out and it's just a small part of the background. This is just ridiculous. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. Like I said, I loved him on Promethea. I loved him on Batwoman. Unfortunately, I think that's all I've seen from him that I can recall. This is by far my favorite, easily. And there's a new style that we haven't really gotten to see yet. Metamaru Mountain, played with really well. Striations on the rock there in the background. Let's see if I can find just a couple more things to show off. I mean, I'm just rambling, but it's just, I mean, it's evident on the page how good the art is. It is wonderful. The story is definitely just a vessel for the art, but that is not a problem. It is very well done in its own right, and the only reason that it gets overshadowed is just because J.H. Williams is a monster. Absolute monster on the page. At this point, I don't even know what to say about this stuff. There's that kind of 30s-esque. I'm just saying a year. I don't know of the decade. It just reminds me of kind of a classic crime comic kind of feel. He's kind of like a PI, hard-headed PI. He's from Chicago in the book, and he definitely is written that way. Always wants to get into scraps and stuff like that. I would like to show off this awesome sci-fi, almost like that's what you'd see on a cover of a classic sci-fi book, but I mean, he can just put it right in the interior and it works perfectly. This one is really cool. I can't show the full the way this ends up, but you've got a split story here. So there's one story happening here, one happening here, and it continues through the whole book, or the whole issue here. The reason I can't flip through it all is because there is nudity coming up, and YouTube doesn't like that necessarily, so I'll skip it. Just to show you what's happening in the bottom half is a lot more colorful than the rest of the book. Wow, I'm going long on this. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is... I think I've said about all I need to say. Just look at that. It is ridiculous. I wish we could get something like this monthly. I would never expect them to do something like this monthly. It'd be impossible to keep this level of quality and intricacy. There's more of that Wrightson-esque horror designs, classic zombie stuff. I mean, he embraces the schlocky nature of some of these genres. He embraces the tropes that make them silly and just completely goes with it. I really like this framing at the end because it's not a style you see normally in the book. Just kind of, I would say his average style, very, very detailed, but not stylized overly so. I wouldn't pin this on any one genre or artist as reference, but it is very, very intricate in its own right. And then the back matter is just a bunch of covers showing off his work in issue form, and then he has a playlist of all the stuff he listened to when he was creating, which is really, really cool. I think he's got one for every issue, and I love that as well, so you can see what was inspiring him while he was drawing. And there's more of that character there. But yeah, this is incredible, and I would recommend it to anyone, even if you're not a huge fan of Blackman and Williams' writing. I think that this is above and beyond the stuff that I've seen from them. And art-wise, you will never see anything like this other than from Williams himself. And this is him at the top of his game, better than he's ever been, in my opinion. And working with all of the modern trappings and advancements in comics to just create something that is unlike anything else. And I'm dying to get more of it. I know people were lukewarm on some of Blackman's writing and stuff, like I said, but I think this is worth it. The design front to back, the writing, everything works as one cohesive story, and it really is beautiful. So, published by Image. I'm sure I missed that at the beginning, but here's the spine. Yeah, recommend it. Above and beyond a 10 for me. If I had to split it up, art and writing, the writing's probably at least a 9. It's still fantastic. The art is just a 10. It's just a 10. If you've read this, or if you haven't, I would like to know why you skipped it. Or if you have read it, I would like to know what you thought. And if you're like me and you're dying to get more of it, because it's just awesome. It is just awesome stuff. I think I'll close it out on this showcase of all the styles there. Very reminiscent of the spaceship from earlier. But yeah, appreciate you guys watching. Sorry this went so long. It was worth it. So thanks guys. Peace.